Is this thing on? So I'm wrapping up, getting close to the end of the Desire series. But sort of before I get into sort of the final four of the Desire series, it has focused too heavily on sex and intimacy. And to rectify that, I'm going to make a series of videos on desires that aren't necessarily related to sex. There's still sort of like, there is sex as an element within them, but basically it's saying these are things that wants that humans have, that people have, that don't necessarily mean sex and intimate relationships. And that will sort of help make the Desire series a little more expansive, and then it also helps preview the following series, which is motivation. And how I'm going to distinguish desire to motivation is sort of the motivation is the mechanized process into which people learn to achieve their desires. You need motivation as a process for achieving what you want. And so a lot of sort of what I've talked about around wants has been related to intimate relationships and sex, but it's not everything that humans want. But in the evolutionary perspective, there's two sort of fundamental things that people need, and that's survival and reproduction. That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate being, let's continue on living in order to have a new generation to continue on living. Those are sort of the ultimates of natural and reproductive selection. It's genetic legacy, but it's also survival. And I think more and more people in the modern culture, because we have grown such a big population, more and more people are choosing, hey, I don't necessarily need to have a family. I don't necessarily need to continue my genetics. The thing is that from the evolutionary perspective, those that don't continue on their genetics aren't really necessarily relevant to scientific study, because then they're not going to be a form of the population 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Their genes will not be in the population. And thus there won't be sort of further generations. There's a sex researcher that recently put out a book called Sextinction, which is talking about how there's a reduction in sex. But the thing is that the human population has grown so big right now that does it really need as large of a percentage reproducing? Now it's sort of like a eugenicist argument to make, because you're saying, oh, maybe certain percentages of the population shouldn't have children, and that's not the intention of the argument. The intention of the argument is the human population is 4 times it was a century ago, and no other point in human history has had the human population quadrupled. So that is sort of things to consider. People don't necessarily need to have children, and this is sort of why I'm doing desire outside of sex. So I'm breaking it down into 3 steps, 3 forms of desire. There's material desire, cognitive desire, and spiritual desire. So spiritual desire will sort of revolve around ethical principles, um, and then also sort of purpose. Ethics and purpose is sort of what the spiritual will, and then the cognitive is more social slash sort of experimental, I would say. And then the final, which is going to be a shorter one with this video, is the material, because I think I covered a lot of it in the aggression series. So material desire. Material desire is related to wanting things to help your standard of life, help the way you live in the world. Material desires could also highlight a social element, social status, but mostly it's just coveting things, coveting money, coveting property, coveting land. That's what material desires are. And these, it's sort of sex egalitarian in terms of both men and women want these things. Now, I think a strong argument can be made that for the social element of material desire, I think women are more drawn to it. And what I mean by that is women are more likely to be covetous around objects that enhance their social image, wanting things that help them fit in more, help them sort of be part of the crowd, help them sort of create a new friend group or be part of a friend group. Men in general, compared to women, care less about having things that other people would think positively of. But men still do experience it. And that's sort of the social element and the material desires. Having things just because other people might like the fact that you have those things. So that's material desire from a social element. And then the material desire from the survival element is, well, there's certain resources that you need to live a normal life, to live a functional life. There's societal related, which is more in the social realm, but things like food, water, and shelter are sort of those things that it would be very difficult to survive if you don't have those. They say like you can go probably 3 days without water. You can probably go 3 weeks without food. What's the other one for shelter? I think it's like 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and maybe 3 months without shelter. It depends on sort of, there are people in unhoused populations that can be in those forms of populations for a long time. It's just not an ideal way to live. It's often sort of tied to sort of social angst around you and inability to keep yourself clean, inability to maintain employment. So those are sort of material desires that you could argue are more needs than wants, and thus you calling it a desire is kind of a misnomer. But then you got the things that are sort of more desirous, like things that entertain you, things that help you fit socially, things that help improve your economic circumstance. Those things are not necessarily needs but wants, and in sort of capitalist cultures, you do end up having more people both achieving those things but also hoarding those things as well. And so sometimes, from the political perspective, you want tools to help balance it from it becoming too over influenced into smaller populations. Other forms of material desire outside of those things, sort of basically you just need a physical asset as sort of what of the object of desire is, whereas sort of the cognitive desires and the spiritual desires it's more abstract. Anyways, these are just my thoughts. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.